share here. Like I said, I'm just gonna take me. Well, I guess I can leave me right there. Present now. All right. So, free enterprise capitalism. Can you guys hear me okay? Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. When we're talking about free enterprise, it's just this system that we're in where you can buy things, you can sell things, you can own businesses. I'm going to pick on James just because I know your stepdad owns his own business, right? He owns his own construction company. Yeah. So James' dad had to set up his own business at some point in time, get the permits that he needed to do that, and now he owns his own construction company. And we can do that in America, and it's a really good thing because not all countries allow you to do that. So week at a glance. Today we're doing free enterprise. Then we're going to talk about tomorrow roles and responsibilities. So we're going to look at what's your role as a business owner, what's your role as a consumer in a free enterprise system. You'll see there the chapter 3 review is online. There's a link there. It's in Schoology. If you want to start working on that, that'd be great because on Thursday we have a test. So Thursday in class, I'll have the test open and ready to go. And I'll also be there that whole hour if kids have questions or, need help with anything. I'll just have that hour for the test. And then Friday would be a day for just makeup work. So it'll be a good time for you guys to log in and take it because then there won't be any issues if you guys are having any problems with it. It will be book format, meaning just with this online format, it'll be mostly multiple choice matching. There might be a question you have to answer on there written, but most of it's going to be multiple choice or matching, or something that you can do in that Schoology format. Okay. All right. So, what risk does an entrepreneur assume when opening their own business? And you guys online can just shout it out if you have any. Anybody know? So, what would be a risk of opening your own business? Yeah, go ahead.
Lack of customers or need for certain business.
So James said lack of customers or maybe lack of need for that business. And those are two reasons why most businesses that open in America actually fail, which is really disheartening when you hear that. It's like, oh my gosh, most businesses fail. But that doesn't mean that it's a bad thing just to try. So, and sometimes those businesses that fail turn into another business. Okay, so what are some benefits? Think of a product that you use that was developed or modified as a result of some change in the marketplace. Would the product have been developed in a command economy, and how does it demonstrate the strength of a free enterprise system? So let me explain those questions a little bit. So we have lots of products we use every day. In fact, I see kids in front of me right now on Chromebooks and laptops. And do you guys know that the first computer filled like a room that was the size of 2 classrooms? So computers have obviously evolved. And part of the reason that computers have evolved is there's a need for them. And now what that computer could do in 2 huge rooms, our phones can do that now. In fact, our phones can probably do more than that original computer did. So in a command economy where like one central figure or the government owns everything, do you think that there's as much innovation? What do you guys think? No, probably not. Why? And if you don't know the answer, that's okay. Anybody online have any idea why in a country where the government owns everything, why might there not be as much innovation? Okay. Well, part of it is innovation takes money, right? And in America, business owners will put down their own money to make a product or create something that's better than a product that's out there in the hopes that they're going to be able to sell it and make some money. In a command economy where your government or essential figure owns and controls everything, they might not have that extra money to spend, or they might not see a need for it because they already have something that's doing what they want it to do. So free enterprise, capitalism allows us to do those things. These are some terms that are in your book. They're also, you'll see these come up on the review sheet. So free enterprise has capitalism and free market system. Economic freedom allows you to choose as the consumer. And we're going to talk more about that tomorrow. Like what you as a consumer have a right to do. Capitalism allows voluntary exchange between buyers and sellers. For the most part. So if you're hungry and want to go out to lunch, nobody's going to tell you where to go, right? You can eat free school lunch, or you can go to McDonald's, or you can go to a sit-down restaurant somewhere and eat. In America, nobody tells you where you can go to eat lunch. It also allows you to choose your job, and I talked about this already. Choose your job, employer, what you do. If you don't like your job, you can quit your job and go find another job. So that's something that we have. Voluntary exchange between buyers and sellers just means that if I want a new iPhone, I can go to US Cellular and get a new iPhone. But nobody's going to make me do that. And if I want to keep my old cell phone until it's basically falling apart, I can do that too. That's a voluntary exchange between buyers and sellers. And then finally, private property rights. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. But basically in America, we have the right to own our own property. And I think tomorrow we're going to talk about something called eminent domain. And you may or may not heard that term before, but eminent domain is when, and it just happened in Wisconsin in Racine a couple years ago. And we'll talk about that situation. But basically it's where the government can come in and say, we're going to buy your property because we're going to put something there that's going to benefit the community as a whole. And this has happened over time when roads are built, highways are built, things like that. The government actually buys your part of your property at the fair market value, and it can do that without you having a choice. But that's rare. In most situations, you have the right to buy your own property, live in your own home, own your own cars. Do you guys have any questions? Okay. All right, so we're going to watch a little video on this, but actually it's not a video, it's just a slide thingy. So the profit motive is largely responsible for growth of free enterprise. And profit motive, people in America and other free enterprise systems want to make a profit, right? What's a profit? Anybody? Anybody online? Yeah, go ahead, Jane.
Money.
Profit is money. People go into business because they want to make money. Competition actually drives that. And tomorrow we're gonna talk a little bit more about competition too. All right, let me just click through, there's a little slideshow here. Okay, the profit motive encourages individuals to open new businesses. So small businesses are probably the fastest growing businesses in America because it's not hard to open a business. That just says profit encourages. Economic freedom allows you to use your skills, the different markets that are out there, whatever merchandise you want to sell to be successful. And once again, this is something we're going to talk about tomorrow a little bit about Monroe and kind of where our market is here and what new businesses you see being successful and what new businesses maybe haven't been successful. This is in your book. This is just showing you that 54% of all U.S. sales, so over half of what is sold in this country, I mean, you think of this country and you think, you know, Apple and some of the big car companies, Ford, Chevy, Disney, that they sell, you know, like probably, when I think of those things, oh yeah, they're probably selling 90% of what's in America. But the truth is, this nation was formed on small businesses and it still exists. 54% comes from small businesses today. And they also provide 55% of the jobs. So when a small business goes under, yeah, maybe it only affects 20 people. But when you look at the bigger picture and you look at the pandemic and what happened with the pandemic, it didn't affect the big companies. It affected a lot of small town businesses or small businesses in big towns, much more significantly than those big businesses. But the kind of the point of that is that small businesses still run America, which is kind of good to know. This slide, I know it's a little fuzzy, but this just goes through those 5 things we just talked about and gives you like the little mini definitions of it. So, and you can find this, it would be up in that scroll thing in your online book, up above where your reading is on the right-hand side, but you can take a look at it, and it's just a nice graphic to explain those 5 different things that feed into free enterprise capitalism. Okay, what are some benefits? So I mentioned time and again that individual freedom is super important, right? It's good to have the ability to make your own business. Market economies produce a huge variety of goods. And when we talk about consumers tomorrow, we're going to talk about that. But as an American, if I want to buy a phone, I'm not limited to the type of phone I buy. There's hundreds out there on the market, probably thousands. Market economies adjust daily because the market changes daily. And if you ever take accounting or a class that has that looks at the stock market, you can kind of see that. There's competition, and competition is good for you guys. It's good for you, the consumers, because when you have competition, businesses are forced to try and make better products at better prices to appeal to you guys, the consumers. And then that's a little bit hard to see, but part of the thing in a capitalistic system is that wealth is created. And the GDP, or the gross domestic product of America, consistently has gone up over the years, meaning we're selling more and more and more things in America every year. This year might be a little different with the pandemic. It'll be interesting to see what the GDP is this year, but this is just a slide picture. If you guys look down at the bottom there, it just tells the different kinds of toothpaste that have been on the market and how it's grown. So there are literally hundreds of different kinds of toothpaste. I know most of us probably use Colgate or Crest, but even when you're buying Colgate or Crest, there's probably 15 different varieties of those. And that's just one little thing in our market and there's plenty of like private companies and ones that are, more eco-friendly, or they're organic or things like that. It's all out there for consumers to use. And that's with most things in our economy. I always think of cereal. What's your guys' favorite cereal? Somebody online shout it out. What's your favorite breakfast cereal?
Cocoa Pebbles.
Cocoa Pebbles. Anybody else?
Lucky Charms.
Lucky Charms. Okay, you guys, and you have a lot more marshmallows than when I was growing up. James, what's your favorite?
I eat cereal a whole lot.
You don't eat cereal? Mine would be probably peanut butter Captain Crunch, which is weird and random, but that's one I like. When I was growing up, we had like Frosted Flakes, Cheerios, Lucky Charms, but they didn't have nearly as many marshmallows. I don't know. We didn't have nearly as many to choose for. The market drives that. We as consumers say, hey, we want more choices. And it provides. What are some bad things? Is that something you can see because of the pandemic and what you guys have lived through this year is that there can be disadvantages when the market falls. It's going to affect everybody. It's going to affect you as consumers. It's going to affect those small business owners. And if you look at a command economy where the government is kind of in control of everything, you won't see those big, huge dips because one entity owns everything. So that is one disadvantage. Like when you talk about the Great Depression in U.S. history, when you talk about the pandemic in years to come, absolutely something that was affected is the market. Another thing we're seeing more of is in a free enterprise system, the gaps between the haves and the have-nots is growing, meaning that people that are in that lower, that are more poor, unless they want to really get out of it, because you can, but it's getting harder and harder, and there's this gap growing between the rich and the poor, where if you're living in poverty, and I don't think this necessarily refers to everyone living in poverty, because living in a town like Monroe with the resources we have, if you want to get out of here and go to college, there are actually resources out there. But in inner cities, big cities, sometimes it's hard. And unfortunately, those gaps are growing where you don't have this huge middle class anymore, which is not necessarily a good thing. In free enterprise economies, big companies sometimes combine together, because if there's too much competition, prices remain really low, and then businesses aren't making enough money. So sometimes they combine together, so there's less choices for consumers in order for the people making the products to make more money. And then finally, government regulation. I know it's hard to see for you, but I think they can see it online. Government regulations does put some things, make it a little bit more difficult to produce some things. For example, if you want to make anything food related, if you want to open a restaurant, there's lots of things that you have to do in order to make sure that it's safe for people to come in and buy your food. Some businesses, there's more regulations than others, but especially when you're dealing with something that is the public is going to consume, and put in their bodies, there's lots and lots of regulations about that. Or you think of like the auto industry. Sometimes automakers, there was just some bailouts a few years ago. There's lots of regulations to keep you guys safe as somebody that rides in a car or drives a car. And sometimes those regulations cost money, and it makes it more difficult to keep a business. And then your book offers every chapter, it talks about different careers. And this is just a slide on, and I'm not going to read through it, but on franchise owners. So for example, Culver's here in town, that's a franchise, meaning there's an owner to Culver's. So somebody owns the store here in Monroe, and they pay a franchise fee to Culver's corporate so that they can have that store. And one of the reasons is that's really good is because people know the Culver's name. People are going to go to Culver's. Lots of restaurants in Monroe have failed over the years. And when you don't have that name recognition, sometimes it's harder to keep a business going. One of the cons is you don't make as much money as maybe a very, very successful restaurant, but at the same time, you can see a franchise owner, after all their expenses, might be making $55,000 to $75,000 a year. And sometimes it's even more than that. So just a career that's out there if you're interested in the food industry but scared to start your own restaurant, that's something you could do. All right, do you guys have any questions? Do you guys online have any questions? Okay, I'm going to stop sharing.